Katie, let it out with Katie. Let it out with Katie DeLaPorte, enthusiast and curator of people and ideas you need to hear.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. This is your host, Katie DeLaPorte, and you are listening to Let It Out with me. And I'm recording from Williamsburg in Brooklyn, New York. And I want to get right into this episode because it's so great. I've wanted to have Danielle LaPorte on the podcast forever, and now she finally is. And I don't even really want to talk too much about it because you'll hear me gush over my relationship with her and her work throughout the episode. But I was planning on reading a little passage from her book that I really loved, that I thought you guys would love. Her new book, White Hot Truth, which we talk about quite a bit in this episode. But not exclusively. We talk about a lot of other things. We talk about body image and feminism and parenting and motherhood and things I'd never heard her speak about at length before came up in this interview, which was really exciting. But we did, of course, as well talk about her new book, White Hot Truth, because I really genuinely enjoyed it so much. And like I said, I wanted to read you a little part of it, but I can't find my book in the move. I don't know if it's still in Michigan or if it's somewhere here and I just don't know where, but I can't find it. So maybe in a future episode, maybe I'll do a favorites episode like next week or something, and I'll read it in that. But for right now, you'll get to hear from Danielle directly. And if you're listening to this the day it comes out, she is actually speaking in LA on Friday, June 23rd. And the doors open for that at 6:30 p.m. So go to her website. We'll put the link in the show notes for information on her book tour. But it would be so cool to catch her live. I've never actually seen her live or met her in person. This was the first time we spoke, but I would love to someday. And if you're in LA, I highly suggest it. Speaking of speaking, I am speaking this week at Wanderlust in Vermont. I leave on Wednesday, and I'll be speaking a couple times throughout the festival. So if you're going, please come say hi. Please come to my talks. I'm giving 2 talks on journaling and another talk called Make Your Life Your Masterpiece, Not Your Body, in the Speakeasy. And that one is on Saturday, or that one's on Friday, and the other 2 are on Thursday, I'm pretty sure. But check the website if you are going. I can't wait to see you. And if you still want to go, I think you still can. We'll put the links in the show notes. But I'm really excited to go to Wanderlust. I've never been to Wanderlust, and I'm really excited to speak and meet you guys. Being here in New York has been great. I've actually already met 4 or 5 people that I've just run into either on the street or at bar class that listen to the podcast, and it's really cool. And I actually got an Instagram message from someone saying, "Oh, we saw you at bar class, but I didn't want to say hi. You were, in your practice or whatever." And I was like, "No, please say hi." So that was really cool, and I hope I keep running into more people. And I want to do a meetup here in Williamsburg in Brooklyn in a couple weeks after I get back from Wanderlust. And my friend Talia, who has been a guest on the podcast, she also lives here. So I think we're going to do it together, which will be really fun. So more info on that coming soon. I want to get right into today's episode. So let's talk about the sponsors. So the first sponsor is an amazing skincare brand that I love, and I think you will love too. They're called Nudu, and that is spelled Nudu. And they use really great ingredients to create these products that make you feel like you're giving yourself a facial at home, which I love. Our show producer Amanda loves them as well. And you really can feel the great ingredients in their products when you're using them. You can feel that they don't use chemicals. And, everything you put on your skin absorbs right into your blood. So you don't want to use harsh chemicals. They're not great. So anyway, if you want to try out Nudu, use the code LETITOUT, that's let it out, all one word, for 20% off your order. That's a lot of percentages off, so just try it out. I think you'll really enjoy it. Again, that's nudu.com, 20% off. Use the code LETITOUT at checkout. And, it just lets them know that I sent you. It also gives you your discount. The link to that will be in the show notes, so please check them out. Another sponsor for this week's podcast is my friend Gabby Bernstein and her amazing online program called Spirit Junkie Masterclass. And Danielle is a fan of Gabby's because they're friends. So it's a great episode for her to be a sponsor of. And just check out Gabby's free video series. It's really great. It's free and it's launching right now. And she tells you how to release some of your blocks to abundance and money. And she's one of my favorite people. Been on the podcast several times. So I highly suggest checking out her free video series and maybe signing up for her Spirit Junkie Masterclass. I've done it. A lot of my friends have done it. If you have any questions about it, let me know. But right now it's just the free video series that is available, and can't hurt to check it out. So use the link in the show notes to click through to the free video series. That's something that lets her know again that I sent you. So any questions on that, any questions on New Do, any questions on anything, let me know. I want to do a question and answer episode eventually really soon too. So join the Facebook group if you haven't already. That's where I find out the questions to answer. And we talk about everything we're into. So I love you guys. Thank you as always for listening, and enjoy my conversation with the amazing Danielle LaPorte.
Why are you in Detroit? What's going on there?
Well, it's a really cool time to be here. I'm from Michigan, but I moved here about 5 years ago for my job, and it's really cool. Like, a lot of young people are moving to the city, and artists, and the cost of living is great, and I love it here. But I'm actually moving next week to New York City.
Oh. Okay, cool. I've been wondering how Detroit is doing. Next time I go to Windsor to visit family, I'm going to go across and see what's happening.
Yeah, well, I wish I would be here and I could show you around. I can at least tell you all the good places.
Yeah. Okay, I'll email you.
Cool. Well, thank you again so much for doing this.
Thank you.
I started this podcast in 2013, and I made a list of all the people I wanted to have on, and you were like the first one on the list, so this is really cool.
Right on, we did it.
We did it. So congratulations on the new book. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's feeling good.
Good. Yeah. Before I want to talk about you and your past and your future and your present, but I've been liking starting this podcast in the present with what is fascinating you, what are you realizing, what have you been contemplating, lately, like in the last today or week.
Okay, so we're just rolling. I'm going to get into it.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Is that okay? We'll just kind of talk naturally, and then I end with some quick fire questions, but it's just really organic like this.
Yeah. Okay, so what am I realizing? I am realizing that my creativity is my salvation. And it's like such a current lesson. I've had moments in the past, like I was in Bali once. I was having a terrible time. It was extra terrible because everybody else was telling me how magical Bali was. And it felt like the trip was cursed for me. I got in this motorcycle accident. It was bad. And I was there for a long period of time. And towards the end, I realized I hadn't had one creative idea in like 2 or 3 weeks. But that night, went for a swim, and I thought, oh, I have an idea. I want to write about that. And that's when I realized like I was coming back. And then just recently, we had like a bit of a curveball, a business curveball thrown our way, and it threw me off for like exactly 34 hours. And I realized again, like to recover, to get out of that, I needed to create something. I needed to write something or go paint. So yeah, my creativity is my salvation.
Oh my goodness. I love that and relate to that so much. I think, have you seen, I forget what, it might be a TED Talk or maybe it's a graduation speech, but there's this guy and he talks about, no matter what happens to you, like your dog dies, make good art. You get run over by a car, make good art. Like whatever happens to you, if you can take those experiences and make it art, it gives your life meaning in this really interesting, beautiful way. And I have been just like kind of in the busyness of life and the day-to-day, and I think I completely understand what you're saying, and it hit me so hard because I think it's so true. Do you think that creativity being a need that we all have, and I heard Brene Brown say once on Elizabeth Gilbert's podcast that unused creativity is not benign.
Is there a point that it gets toxic?
Yeah, like if you don't like make something in your life, whether it's, a cake or, whatever, like if you're not using your creativity in some way, you feel blocked and you don't feel yourself and okay. Do you think that everyone has that creative need?
Yes, I do. I think about that. But yeah, because it's your life force. It's your ideas. I mean, ideation is everything, right? Whether, you're creating your meal or how you create how you're going to show up in a relationship. Like romance is a highly creative endeavor. So like, I mean, first of all, we just need to like take off the table that creativity is about being quote unquote artistic.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if you're having ideas and healthy impulses that you don't act on, if you're blocking the flow of your love, yeah, that stuff turns poisonous. And also, I'm sure everybody can relate to the downsides of poison, right? And how unhealthy you become in your psyche and your body. But also there's this atrophy that happens too. Like you just will not be generally as loving if you don't let your love out. You're not going to be as creative if you don't let your creativity out. It's a muscle.
Yeah. And you're so right. Like I feel so much better on days when even if I write something in the morning and it takes me 20 minutes, or if I record a really good podcast, or I write like a long, very myself email to my boyfriend, I still feel better than if I just even if I was just relaxing or like, like you were saying, kind of in Bali. Like I feel most myself when I am doing something that shows that, and it can be in any element of life.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So your book, like I said, I love it so much. It's so amazing. And this podcast used to be called The Wellness Wonderland, and I ended up changing the name because I went through all of these things and I realized that I had a very unhealthy relationship with healthy eating and wellnessy things in general. And the book speaks about that in such a beautiful, poetic way. So first of all, thank you. And then you address a main theme in this book is self-help exhaustion and self-care becoming a to-do list, which again was so relatable to me. And I actually remember years ago in one of my favorite interviews with you that you've ever done, and maybe I should tell you I'm your number one fangirl, so I've really digested lots of things, so hi.
Hi.
But anyway, you were talking with Jonathan Fields years ago, and I don't know what book of yours had just come out, but it was a while ago, like I said, and you had this line that just really stuck on me, and you said, and you kind of said it just like in passing, but you were like, can we just all graduate from self-improvement? And so it seems to me like this was kind of a slow realization for you that you had even started way back then. So could you kind of talk about how this concept and what came to be the theme of this book came to you and how that unfolding was?
Well, I was going to write a book about encouragement, and it was going to be it wasn't about encouragement, it was me being encouraging, and it was going to be a rah chapter on forgiveness and then some cheerleading on grief, and and I had this revelation that I'm actually not that interested in being encouraging, because sometimes that can be a lot of pablum. And I'm so anti-motivation because, motivation is this something outside of yourself. You work to attain, you get the reward. What I'm really into is inspiration. It's all internal. This feels good, so I'm moving towards it. So I was like, not actually about encouragement. And I was already in the middle of a book deal for a book that was about me being encouraging. And I just thought, let's just go deeper. Actually, I'm just remembering this as I'm speaking. I'm glad you asked this.
Cool.
I was so in the middle of this creative process, and should I sign the publishing contract and all that? I had this speaking gig in San Francisco, and how I work now, how I work on stage is I get out and I do my thing. I always start with a spoken word piece, and then I kind of preach for a bit. I just really anchor in, set the tone, crack some jokes. This is let's just get to know me. And then I open it up. It's really like this kind of spiritual improv. And that night, it really worked. And so there's 800 women who are just shouting questions at me. And they're like, and this is what I've asked them to do. Talk to me about writer's block and open sex or open relationships. And talk to us about sacred sex. And talk to us about money and anger. And it was really sparky and fiery, and it was great. And I came home from that trip. I was lying on my bed, on my living room floor, thinking about the book that I didn't really want to write. I thought, that's what I want it to be. I want the book to feel like that. And it's current. And I'm not standing up on stage being encouraging, telling you that you can do it, I'm standing up on stage saying, this is what's worked for me in my life. This is how I failed. This is how I've been lost. This is the money I've wasted. This is how I got off track. This is how I realized I was never off track. This is where the power is. And if I were you, this is what I would do. And we're all tribe. And we've all been doing all this shit for so long. And some of it is divine and some of it's compost. And that is how the book came to be. And that was a real moment of clarity. And I let my editor and my agent at the time know that I wanted to change the title of the book. And they didn't like it. And I was told by a number of people in the industry that encouragement would have better search engine optimization. And I was like, well, too bad. Not only am I changing the title, I'm not doing this book deal. I'm going to do this book myself. So that's the genesis of it.
That's so cool. Well, you can feel all of that, and I'm sure you've been hearing that again and again, but it really is true, and it's super easy to read and fun to read, and it feels reading the book how you described that speaking gig. You can feel that energy in the book, which is cool. One thing in particular that I really related to from the book was where you talked about growing up Catholic, and I did as well, and applying some of that same Catholic guilt to your spiritual practices and your self-care practices and your wellness practices. So I'd love if you could talk about that.
That's a great distinction. I wish I would have said that in the book. That's exactly what happened, is I applied that same dynamic of trying to please. So there's always guilt involved where there's authority present. I just took Catholic guilt and applied it to New Age stuff. So instead of trying to basically get into heaven, is really what it boiled down to. I was just trying to get good karma happening. And it's what I call the cosmic council in the sky. Just the energy, my guides, the angels, God, goddess. And so I wanted to be pure of mind, but at the same time, super liberated, more mindful, but more sensual. Just do the right thing all the time. And when you're trying to do the right thing, as in the right thing out there, then you can't feel what the right thing is for in here for yourself. And that was the problem. That's a big problem, actually. I think that's everybody's problem. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it is a planetary issue. This is a pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing in the book that really got me was the concept of that you defined so well by other people, but it's the way that it's spiritual bypassing essentially, but the way that you talk about it, which I love in just one line, which is all the woo is keeping us from dealing with our poo. And I think that like I have the book in front of me right now, and I highlighted the part about instead of medicating with Marlboros and martinis, we might be doing it with metaphysics and macrobiotics, and I could go on. Like that whole paragraph is just really super spot on. But can you talk about a little bit about spiritual bypassing and where were you at the time when you started to kind of dismantle this clenching to this new kind of, framework of thinking and started to have such a more cozy relationship with it?
That did not come in a lightning bolt. So that's a very long, I wouldn't say drawn out, it's just like this long process of a couple years of this and a couple years of that. And it's all part of the search. I don't separate. It's like, years ago when I was living in Seattle, I started going to I think it was Shambhala, but some meditation center. And I was going every Tuesday night to learn how to sit and to be a good little Buddhist meditator. And it wasn't working for me. And I remember saying to the teacher afterwards, the instructor, she asked me how it was going. I said, my mind does feel emptier, but my heart feels dry. And I don't want to feel this way. Like, I guess it's good because you say I should just watch my thoughts and not get attached to my thoughts. But I knew that I was like juicier. And so then I moved to Course in Miracles and doing more cosmic Christ stuff. And then eventually meditation started to feel way too heavy for me. And I just drag myself in the mornings to sit down and be a good holistic person and fucking well meditate. And I just this is making me miserable. I don't want to do this. This is not what I want to do. I want to wake up and I want to feel free to do whatever I want to do with my day. And so I stopped meditating, potentially indefinitely, like forever. Thought maybe I'm not a meditator. I was a vegetarian for 12 years. And then I hooked up with someone and married him. And I was a carnivore for another 12 years, 13 years. And now I'm back to really, now I'm headed towards veganism. So long journey, left a lot of it, didn't come back to a lot of it, came back to some of it. And the some of it that I've come back to, I'm in with my whole heart. I'm one of those people. I must meditate every day. It works because I found the form of meditation that works for me. I'm not wired to sit and watch my in-breath and my out-breath. I do all sorts of other things that are meditative, that feel lush and juicy, and I must do it every day because I want to.
Yeah.
I want to. Yeah.
Oh, I relate to that so much. I like the way I behave more when I do those things, but it's so nice when you take away that Catholic guilt that we have with it.
Yeah, that guilt is so most of the time useless. Yes, having a conscience involves having a little bit of guilt about things, and sometimes you're going to do things you feel just brutally guilty for, but it usually has to do with how you've hurt somebody else. But feeling guilty about your practice, no, you shouldn't. Yeah, you want to, sometimes you got to discipline yourself and sit down and do what's best for you. But no one's keeping score.
I really love your meandering, fascinating story of how you came to the work that you do now and writing and speaking and everything you do now. And I know that you've had to talk about this so many times in interviews, and I've heard all of them and loved them, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you on my podcast to speak a little bit about your story. And you, like you said, you grew up in Windsor and you grew up Catholic, and now you're where you are now. Could you talk a little bit about your career path and life path and kind of how you started and take us through that a little bit? You can do it kind of fast forward if you want.
Okay. I'll start with, I never went to university. So I graduated from high school. I skipped college and university, and I was going to go into fashion design. I was going to go to Ryerson in Toronto to study. And I realized I was sewing one night, like sewing machine, and I realized I was getting these intense headaches every time I tried to cut a pattern or sew. And I was like, this is not my path. And then there was lots of just retail and experimenting and bartending. And then I almost accidentally became a publicist. So, I'm a Gemini and I have 5 planets in Virgo. So I must be communicating at all times. So I was wired for publicity. And I started getting people on radio shows and newspapers and stuff like that. And then that turned into my own consultancy and my own little agency to do that. That led me to, I got this reputation for promoting futurists. You promote one futurist, your phone starts ringing because it's such a niche.
Can you explain what a futurist is, actually?
Yeah, a futurist is someone who is looking at how current trends might play out in the future. That's a very simplified way to do it, way to explain it. And how do you make a living being a futurist? Well, sometimes big companies will hire you to do trend analysis. Being a futurist, sometimes it's just like one part of your toolkit. You're a futurist. You've got a degree in it. You can actually go get a degree in it, and you know how to analyze all this other shit about what's happening in certain industries.
Got it.
And you might work for a think tank, as I ended up doing, and you write white papers on what's going to happen if weapons of mass destruction get out of control here, there, and So we were running. I helped run a think tank full of people thinking about the future and getting paid to do that for businesses and the government. And it was super weird because I was female and Canadian, and I only had ever gone to high school. And I'm working in Washington, D.C. with the intelligentsia, And then I left that because George W. Bush got into office. I was just like, I'm going to stay here for this. And I pretty much fled and came back to Canada, and I was with someone who I'd eventually end up marrying, and I partnered with a friend we created this little kind of Q&A on how to soulfully brand and design your life. This little formula. It was pretty cool. And we wrote a book. The book got some attention. Oprah producers called. We ended up not getting on the show because of timing and stuff. But I used that. I leveraged what had just happened with Oprah calling us to go raise a bunch of money for the company. And then I got fired from that company. So I got Steve jobbed from my own business. And I wrote about that a lot in my book called The Firestarter Sessions. And after that, I left with a huge amount of debt, and the company declared insolvency shortly after they fired me. And there was a lot of betrayal. It was bad news. I wrote the book. I wrote Firestarter Sessions. I went out on my own. I started a website. Ironically, not so ironically, divinely, I called the website White Hot Truth. Yeah.
I know.
And I changed the name to DanielleLaPorte.com, which is where everybody goes now. And so then I started offering these one-on-one little sessions called fire starter sessions to help mostly women figure out how to brand themselves and start a business and grow their social media following. And they were $300 for a session. It was about an hour, 90 minutes. And eventually, 6 months, a year later, it's $1,000 a session. I was booked 6 months in advance. I got tired of that, tired of talking about how to rock it on Twitter. And I got a book deal for fire starter sessions. And it really goes on from there. And then I wrote the Desire Map, which has become a huge part of my career. Like Desire Map, there's the book, there's a whole licensing program. Somewhere in the world, every weekend there's a Desire Map workshop. There's the day planner. There's an app. It's like this thing that I is still so very active in my life. I still adore it. And now, the White Hot Truth.
Yeah. So cool. I've been along for all of it. And I have all of those products. There's
That's
something
so awesome.
in your story that, well, first of all, thanks for sharing all of that, because I think it's really helpful for me and people in general just to hear that people's paths aren't necessarily linear. But the piece that I'd never heard before was when I listened to you on Rich Roll's podcast a couple weeks ago, and you were talking about how you worked at the Body Shop between, I think, before you went to DC, and you talked about how you had this opportunity there you were growing with the company, and you were kind of in this very steady job with growth opportunity, but you felt a need for entrepreneurship, and that really stuck with me. And I would love if you could kind of talk about that pull from, the steadiness of working, for a company, and knowing that you said in the interview, I think something like you knew it would never be yours. And that's the part that really stuck with me. So I think with entrepreneurship becoming kind of trendy or alluring very much right now, how do you feel about that? Do you think there are some people who are just wired for it and it will always be a pull to do something that's theirs? Or I'd love just kind of your thoughts on that point in your life and looking back on it, and then also, where things are now with entrepreneurship.
I think this is a gross overgeneralization, but I think you're either an entrepreneur or you're not. And I don't think entrepreneurship is superior or the better way. I mean, you have to do what feels natural to you. Some people aren't wired for the risk, and that's really cool. We need people who aren't turned on by risk. Some people, they want to be in a more behind the scenes support role. We need that. You can still be a genius in that dharma and that way of being. But yeah, I mean, I can usually tell within 10 minutes of talking to someone whether they're a natural entrepreneur or not. And if you're not, don't try it. It's going to be really painful. It's painful either way. It's just not going to be very fulfilling. So this is who I am. I've always been this way. Combine that with my natural artistic abilities, which are mostly in writing, and like leadership quality. That is how it's all. That's why this works for me. That's how it works for me. Yeah. So, and I really have authority issues. Like, I cannot be told I can't even follow a recipe to cook. I'm just
Me
like,
too.
no, I'm just like, that can't be right. That can't be accurate.
I do that too.
Yeah. So, and my dad, who's like, oh God, my dad is just like, there's a lot of bravado, and he's got that entrepreneurial spirit to him, and in a great sense of humor. But he once said to me, because one of my very first jobs was working in the arena canteen, selling people hot chocolate and hot dogs. And he did something, and I didn't like it. And, I was his daughter, so I thought I can tell him off, And he looked at me. He's a little forceful, but he said, "The boss ain't always right, but the boss is always the boss."
Ooh.
And I thought, that's why I'm going to be the boss. Like, I'm just never going to be in this position again. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I never heard you talk about that time working for that company. And like I said, I really related to that particular part. When did you know you knew you wanted to be an entrepreneur, but when did you know that it was time to leave that job? And did you have any trepidation with that, knowing that you had such opportunity there?
Well, it was a couple of things. One, the company was in that classic place of growth where it was no longer a mom and pop business. I mean, it was, the Body Shop is huge, founded by Anita Roddick. It's an incredible story about socially responsible business. I mean, these were in the days when the term socially responsible had just been coined. Triple bottom line, that was like a new thing. And so, the Canadian couple who owned the Body Shop were franchising it for the country. And so it was like two sisters and one of their husbands, and it was such a beautiful place to be in the beginning. And it was like changing. We had to become more corporate. So it was losing that vibe. So that made it a good time to go. And also, what was I, 23? It's always time to go when you're 23. Yeah. I mean, it's not about hanging in necessarily. And then it was just life. My mom called me, and my mom was like, I'm moving to Santa Fe. And I was like, why are you moving to California? And she's like, okay, Santa Fe is not in California. It's in New Mexico. And I was like, oh, well, I want to come too, because desert. And the plan wasn't even necessarily live with my mom. It was just like, well, I want to live there too. So I did. I had no furniture. I didn't have a dog. Wasn't anybody I was committed to. So I left. Zero trepidation. Zero. I've never made a major change with trepidation. Doesn't mean there aren't fears, but I'm all in when I go for it.
Wow, cool. Thinking of using your path and everything that you just shared, I feel like this is a good time to segue into another thing that I loved from your book that I basically want to tell you and see if you can kind of elaborate on the podcast, which is the way you talk about gratitude and being grateful, and not necessarily being grateful for, you can articulate this better than I can regurgitate it to you, I'm sure, but not being grateful necessarily just for everything that happened to you, like getting canned from your own company, for instance, like you say in the book, but what you learned from all of those experiences. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. You know what? Let me tell you, I've done a lot of podcasts specifically for White Hot Truth. You're the first person that's brought that up. And I've been really wanting to talk about it. So
Yay!
Thank you.
Yay. My book is a mess because I have so many notes. So, I mean, this could go on all night.
Well loved. Okay. Something shitty happens to you. And because you're a spiritual person, because you're on the path, because you want to do the right thing, because you're wise enough to have a broader perspective, you might say something like, I'm so glad I got shafted because I learned a lot, and, there's karma, and maybe this is payback for something I've done. And you know what? They've got their own issues and their own shit, and so do I, and we're all in this together. So, that was really painful and damaging, and they shouldn't have done it, but I'm grateful. Okay, no, stop. This is what I think you should focus on. Be grateful for what you learned from the situation. Be grateful that you had the clarity to see what was going on. Be grateful for all the friends that showed up to peel you off the kitchen floor, to encourage you, to cheer you on, to heal you, to bring you soup, to loan you some money because you got you're bankrupt, whatever it is. Be grateful for that. Be grateful for your ability to reach down in you and pull up all the strength you have and get through it, and still be creative, and still be loving, and still be strong, and still take care of your kids. Be grateful for that. Be grateful for everything that you learned and how much stronger you are and clearer you are. Do not be grateful to that person who treated you like shit. Do not be grateful for the cancer tumor. Do not be grateful for being scammed or ripped off or abused. Because to be grateful for that, well, I think it's just inappropriate. And it gives power away to where it shouldn't be given. It creates this illusion that things that are very wrong and unjust are right and okay. And it keeps you a little bit asleep because it's stupidity. It's new age stupidity. So I'm all for gratitude. Just be very clear and specific about what you're grateful for. And that's where the power is. That's where gratitude becomes your superpower.
What gratitude practice do you do specifically? Would you share that? Like, do you have any specific kind of daily thing around that?
It's daily, and I wouldn't say it's constant, but it's regular. So, on the few days a week, if I wake up and I'm feeling funky and not awesome, I start right away. And I go, I'm so grateful for these sheets. I love these sheets. And don't bullshit yourself about gratitude. Don't fake gratitude, but there's always something. I'm so grateful I have running water. I love this toothpaste. I love this. I'm grateful that I don't have to wear clothes today if I don't want to. I just go for it. I'm so grateful for these strawberries. And I can feel just like a little bit of buoyancy, a little bit of lightness. And right away, what that's doing is I've put myself in the driver's seat for choosing how I feel. And this is scientifically proven. Feelings of gratitude, thankful thoughts affect the chemistry in your brain. So whatever that chemical is, I think it's serotonin, or is it dopamine? Whatever it is, I have just consciously started creating that chemical in my brain. And lo and behold, start to feel a little better. I start making different choices. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to create something. And then, it's this upward spiral of a better day.
Yeah, I love that. Another concept that can also be a buzzword, and I just think, which I've heard you talk about as well, is so overused right now, is authenticity. And you spoke about how there's this fad where transparency can become gimmicky. And I'd love if you could parse that out a bit and explain your thoughts on this, because I think that finding that balance between earnestness and then using your discretion with what you shared has become so muddied, even in myself. And I loved your thoughts on it. Can you talk about that a bit?
You have clearly listened to every interview I've ever done, because some of these things you're asking about, I've only talked about once. I actually have a really great memory for who I've talked about what to. So yeah. You are good. Okay.
It's been really nice to spend the last couple of days with you preparing for this. Like, we had a great Memorial weekend together. So.
All right on. It's cozy. Okay, wait. What was the question about?
About authenticity versus
okay,
raw,
okay.
Overusage of that.
Well, here's the thing. Everybody's actually being authentic all the time. Even if you're an asshole, you are being as authentic as you could possibly be in that moment. So in some ways, this whole thing with authenticity is silly. Even if you're faking it, you're being you. You're being a faker, right?
Yeah.
So that's one thing, but that's more semantics. What I see happening is a lot of people are using their so-called truth for shock value. And that I'm going to be raw and I'm going to be real and I'm going to be bold and I'm going to be out there and I'm going to be really transparent. I'm going to be super exposed and vulnerable, because don't you want to look at that? Don't you want to drive by? Don't you want to click, watch me bleed, And this is not cool for anybody involved. I mean, it's most damaging to the person who's doing it. So I've had a long-held philosophy that I never talk about the shit I'm in when I'm in the shit that I'm in, for a couple reasons. One, I don't want anybody projecting their stuff on me. Like, if I was telling you, like, this is what I'm going through right now and it's really hard, I don't want you having judgments about why I'm in it. I don't need you to pray for me. I don't need you to offer solutions because I'm raw and I'm in it. I need to keep it private. I need to keep my energy contained into myself so I get it together and heal. Then I get through it. And you never know when you're in the crisis, you never know how it's going to turn out anyway. So you got to let the story come to its natural conclusion. So there's a story to tell. And then you figure out what you learned and what you could have done differently. And that becomes the story. That's what you teach. This is what happened. This is how much it sucked. This is how I got into it. This is how I got out of it. You put a bow on it. You put that out publicly. And that is called being of service. Bleeding, flailing, being raw is not necessarily of service when you're in it. And, maybe am I getting old-fashioned? No, I'm not getting oldfashioned.
That kind of seems like that's therapy. Like that's what you do with your therapist.
Right. Exactly. That's it. I don't want to read your diary, and I don't want to witness you in therapy. And also this forced rawness that I see out there. I've asked myself, like, am I getting conservative? I'm not a conservative person. I would, by most accounts, mostly my own, that's the only one that matters, be considered a progressive person. But I have a reverence for elegance and the sacred. So, I swear a lot. I never swear gratuitously. I'm not swearing for effect. This is my self-expression. This is how I emphasize myself. I talk to you just like I'm talking to my girlfriend in my kitchen. This is who I am. But this raw stuff and the language that we're using, sometimes I just don't think people even really read back sometimes what they've written. Like, do you really want to say that about somebody? Do you really want to put that in put that really harsh, fuck this, fuck that language in the context where you're talking about loving somebody else? Like, listen to what you are saying.
Yeah. I'm so glad we got to talk about that. I feel like for the past however long we've been talking, I've been kind of putting pennies in the Danielle LaPorte jukebox of things I've heard that I've really wanted you to talk about on my platform. But now I want to ask you questions that I haven't heard you talk about before. So this is when it's going to get good. So
okay, the hips
stay with
coming.
us, people. Yeah. Well, okay, I've never really heard you speak on feminism directly. So I'd love to know, how you found your feminism and how you define feminism or how you relate to that word today.
Great question. Never been asked. I used to not relate to feminism because this was my reply if somebody were to bring it up. I've never experienced a glass ceiling. I don't feel oppressed or repressed. Certainly didn't feel repressed. Oppression was like, I didn't get it because I was getting the jobs I wanted to get. I was sleeping with the guys I wanted to sleep with. I didn't get what was all of us about. And then I figured out that, I didn't need to figure this out. I mean, I was aware of this, but I became more aware of the extensive, rampant, unchecked oppression of women across the world. That maybe I wasn't experiencing the oppression firsthand, but other people of my gender were. And I was honor-bound, duty-bound, genetically bound to fight for them. Therefore, I am a feminist. Then it became clear to me that I was on the other side of the detriments, the extreme detriments of the patriarchal mindset. And then I was already on board to be a feminist when I woke up to what was happening culturally. And when I got clear, I wanted to really live a life of service. But then when I started to do the math, and really just, I don't think it was to any lack of consciousness. It was more a lack of experience. I needed to go raise money and get fucked over by my male investors and really see that this was a male-female thing. And I need to have a few experiences with some male bosses and really see this was a male-female thing. And as I was starting to wake up to my own actual experiences, then I could see where the patriarchal mindset was in the water. It was in the advertising and the media messages and the educational system and the educational content. And this was very much alive and well in my own life and was affecting me in negative ways. And then when I got more refined about my relationship to feminism, I've been able to, articulate it in the way I'm articulating it here, obviously pretty passionately, but to really take a stand that I think if you are not a feminist, you're actually not a humanist. And you are on the wrong side of universal law and loving inclination if you do not consider yourself a feminist, because feminism is about equality. And when we have equality, we won't need feminism. But right now it's in dire need.
So well articulated and said, like everything you shared. I'm so glad I brought that up.
Me too.
One more question before I ask you the quick questions I ask everyone.
Okay.
But I love how you talk about parenting. I'm not a mother, and I'm unsure if I ever want to be one. But when I heard you talk about motherhood on Rich Roll's podcast, I was actually like, that might be something I actually want to participate in one day. Because the way you talked about it just sounded really cool. And you talk about how you don't look at yourself as a parent to your son. You really look at it as a relationship that you're in with another human being. Could you give a couple insights on that and parenting, and just share with some parents that might be listening, or future parents?
Well, when my son was first born, people would say to me, "How do you like being a mother?" And I was just like, well, I guess I like being a mother. It's really hard work. But I really like being his mother. Like, I don't want to do anything other than be his mother. It's the greatest honor of my life, is to be his mother, because I really like him. And yeah, I just felt, this was a relationship with somebody I liked. More than just, that cellular love. I enjoyed him and who he was as a person. And then I really felt so fortunate. Like I used to, I just would say to God sometimes, well, when I was pregnant, I would say to the universe, like, look, if you want to send me a jock, or an anxiety-riddled little soul, I'm going to do my best. I will rise to the occasion. But it'd probably be a good idea if you sent me a really laid-back, artistic little kid. And that's what I got. We're really peas in a pod. Aww. So I feel super blessed. I feel like I won the lottery. And so when I get asked about parenting advice, especially when I'm doing a speaking gig, I always give this disclaimer where I say, look, asking me about parenting advice is like asking a trust fund kid about money. Because I really feel like there's been zero conflict with my child. He has no behavioral. I've rarely ever even been angry at this kid. So take what you want and leave the rest. I don't know if what I've got to say is useful. But I relate to him as a person, not as an authority. And so I'm almost constantly, it's this balance, constantly listening for, just what he wants to do, what is lighting him up, and what is bumming him out. I rarely say no to him. I even made it a practice when he was little, like, can I have some ice cream? Well, how about we have this? Mm-hmm. Instead of actually using the word no. And at the same time, like other side of the same coin, I am on a mission to indoctrinate this kid into what I think is the best way to live life. So he's constantly like, I hammer this child on how I think the universe works and what I think is right and immoral and ethical and how you should eat. And we still have very few rules. now we're vegetarian. I say, look, it's your life. I've made it really clear why we don't eat meat. And if you want to go do it. But you're not in this house. I think that will be the theme for things as we progress. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I want to come hang out with you guys.
Great. Well, we'll have some gluten-free something.
Yeah.
I mean,
great.
This is shit New Age chicks say. Like,
yeah, we'll
have
cook
kale.
and we won't follow a recipe, and somehow it'll turn out okay. Something we talk about on this podcast every time is body image, and I think as women, it's something that most of us struggle with, and I definitely have. It's been like the biggest thing with me, and I think often with being a health and wellness person and a public figure yourself, how do you handle this? Has this ever been something that has been in your mind, and what do you do if this happens, if you have a bad body image, what I call like a bad body image day, so how it doesn't turn into, you know, a bad body image week or month? How do you shift out of that feeling?
It's a big issue. It's ongoing. I'm so not impervious to this. So when you know, I live a kind of public, like I'm on stage, right? Mm-hmm. There's lots of pictures of me now, and I'm constantly having to think about what I'm going to wear on stage, and there's this balance between some of it's just body image stuff, and some of it is just the practicalities of being in the business, where, look, if dear photographer, if you shoot me from below and on the side, it's not flattering for any woman. It puts on like a good 20 pounds. It ages me. If you don't have the right lighting, I look tired when I'm actually not tired. I'm healthy and I'm vibrant. Don't make me look older than I look. Don't put that filter on, because I look Latina, and I'm not Latina. I'm just a Canadian girl. I'm a mutt, you know, like, so I want to look like the true me and the best me, which means I actually have to put an extra thought to what I wear and the shape of my eyeglasses and my hair and all of that. And I've gotten much more, what's the word? Controlling is the word, with images of myself. Like, you know, I just did a video and photography shoot earlier this year, and they sent me the first draft. This doesn't happen often. I mean, usually you walk out of that shoot and they paid for the shoot. They're going to put up the photos I want to put up. And this crew was women, and we all loved each other. And they said, well, we'll send you the first draft. They sent it to me. I said, you guys, this does not make me look good, and this does not make you look good. So you need to adjust. You need to adjust the saturation on this and do it right. And they did. Photo comes out. I go, don't put that photo up of me. That's not me. Take that down. Use this one. That's where I look the best. That's me. Constantly thinking about losing just another 10 pounds. Just another 10, and then I wouldn't have to worry about what I wear on stage. I wouldn't have to worry about the angle. So it's always there. So that's there. And let me give you the and the ellipses, because this is really important.
Okay.
I always feel sexy. Always. There's most days of the week I feel beautiful. I feel attractive and fuckable and great naked. I never question my attractiveness, because I feel all of me. I'm radiant, and I'm sensual, and I'm loving, and I'm bright, and I got lots of things going for me. So it all balances out. Like, yeah. I keep getting on stage and feeling great when I'm up there, and I still make sure I don't wear horizontal stripes. Right? So
yeah, I'm really glad you said the ellipses and the other part, because first of all, it's true. You are all of those things, and one of the most beautiful people to me that I admire, and you don't know this, but for years, like you have been a role model. I'm like, why am I like crying right now? But it's specifically with body image, and your confidence has been it's been like a constant with me in the last 5 years that I've, come out of an eating disorder and gone through all of these things and found things and unfound things and had all of these different things. And I think if you would have stopped before the ellipsis, and I think sometimes when I hear, and this is all women, because we all nitpick ourselves, but I think when I hear some people that I look at as so beautiful and so confident in themselves and hear them say, I want to lose another 10 pounds, or I want to this or that. Of course we want to change things about ourselves, and that's part of being earnest and real and talking about that. It's great to hear that too. That's helpful to know that you have those thoughts too, but it's also so great to hear you say that confidence that you have and knowing that that's a part of you. And anyway, thank you for just saying all the things you said.
Thanks for asking. It's like, it's a conversation that needs to be had,
Yeah, definitely. One more thing I really want to talk to before these quick fire questions. My book came out, my first book came first, I don't know why I said that. A book that I wrote came out last year, and it's about journaling. And I always like to ask other people about their relationships with journaling, and you're obviously a prolific and beautiful writer and poet. So have you, or are you ever a journaler, and what has that looked like for you?
I was. I don't consider myself a journaler, but I write. So let me explain what that means. I have books, usually Moleskines. I'm very particular about what I write in and what I write with. I write with the same pencil all the time. And you know that moment when you reach into your bag and you can't find your phone?
Yeah.
It's that little heart attack. I have that same moment about my pencil. Okay, so moving on. I write down notes from therapy sessions. I kind of quote journal a little bit about ideas. I mostly use my Desire Map Day Planner to write out my core desired feelings and my ideas for the week and what I'm grateful for. But what I don't do, so maybe that all falls into your bucket of journaling. What I don't do is I never write, this happened. I went here and I did this.
Yeah.
Don't. I was like, I was there when it happened. I don't need to write about it. I don't even write how I felt about stuff that happened. So I don't know, what do you call that? What am I?
I think you're a journaler. I think it's just a way that people process the world. My book was 55 journaling exercises, so prompts to kind of just go into your mind and ask you questions, kind of like your questions in, the conversation starter app that you have or something, but for writing. And I think, going through the world and writing things down, I'm the same way, whether it's like in my phone or in my planner or whatever. I think it gives things meaning, like we were talking about before.
Got it. Okay. I'm a journaler.
I love it.
If you say so.
Okay. So these are fun, quick fire questions. So just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Love it. Go.
Favorite color?
All of them. I can't. Light.
Ooh, nice. Favorite day of the week?
I like all of them. So far, not good.
That works.
Okay, I like every day. Yeah.
What are your morning routines? Maybe the first 3 things you do when you wake up in the morning, and how that affects how the rest of your day goes.
I meditate. I make my kid does not leave the house without getting hugged or snuggled. And I always, 5 days out of the week, I have a smoothie. And then I'll add a 4th one. I obsessively check Instagram.
I love that. What about in the evening? What are the last few things you do before you go to sleep, and how do you wind down and relax at the end of the day?
It's kind of all the same. Upset. Just check one more. Heart, one more little image. Music is huge in my life. So there's always some kind of evening soundtrack that's happening in the house. And there's a lot of bathing that happens for me. So like salt and oils. Yeah, the evening bath is a big thing.
Love a good bath.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my favorite questions from your Conversation Starters app is this one, and I'm going to ask it to you. So what is one thing that you want more than anything? Absolutely, yes, yes, yes.
Well, one thing that one of them is very private, and one is to really never stop creating.
I love that. What is one thing you wish people knew about you that they don't, if there's anything?
Well, my inner circle knows this, but I'm very generous. Yeah.
I can sense that. I feel like your outer circle, speaking for them, knows that too. What's the best thing you've eaten in the last week?
Oh, well, it was just my birthday, so let me think.
Happy birthday.
Thanks. Best thing I've eaten in the week, like what went down? Oh, I had the most glutinous, cheesy margarita pizza.
Yeah.
And it was great with vodka tonic, double lime. Yeah.
What's your greatest lesson on family?
You choose your family in every way. I mean, you choose them, esoterically, and you choose the people who are going to walk with you through your life.
Cool. Greatest lesson on romantic relationships?
Your job is not to ever be your partner's therapist.
Oh, that's really good. What about, where are you with spirituality and God, and what do you think happens when we die?
Is this one of your standard questions?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we live thousands of incarnations in many dimensions. So we're just going to go on to the next chosen assignment. And who knows? I mean, we may be living parallel lives now. So there is no full stop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this question is just really an opportunity for you to recommend things that you love in these categories. So pretend that you're trapped on a deserted island and you can bring with you one book, one movie, one TV show or like series, and one food. What would you bring?
Oh, God. Okay, one book. One book. I might bring the Radiance Sutras. Okay, or something by Rumi. All right, then one
movie.
Food, one movie. Oh, one movie. That's so hard.
You can recommend a couple because I kind of want to know your favorite movie. So I'll bend the rules.
Shit, it's one of my favorite movies. Oh God, I want to Google it right now. What's the name of the movie? Are you in front of a computer? Let's get this right. We need to get it right for people. Google, it's about time. Time is in the title.
Research.
Dominic. He's Dominic somebody and Rachel McAdams. Google Rachel McAdams.
Yeah.
About Time.
Yeah. About Time.
Okay. About Time is one of my favorite movies
cool.
ever. My two favorite films, they're sequels. You must watch them together. The first one is Wings of Desire.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You're like the fourth person to mention that to me recently.
It's a must. And the second one that comes after it is Far Away So Close. And those movies, I mean, they're about angels coming to Earth. And it takes place in Berlin and London. And Lou Reed and Nick Cave. Like, my God, are you kidding? They're a work of art. The director is Wim Wenders. And a third movie, Um, oh, well, I tell you, I've watched the Thomas Crown Affair more than I care to admit.
I've never seen it.
Oh, Pierce Brosnan and Renee Musso, and it's really great. It's a great
It's on
film.
my list. Is there anything recently, movie-wise, that you'd recommend to people, or?
Recently, Captain Fantastic, I thought was incredible.
I loved it. I know.
Loved it. And you talk
So
about
good.
unschooling people.
Yes.
And I really did think Moonlight was a work of art and deserved the Oscar.
Me
But
too.
Moonlight is one of those films that you'll never want to watch again.
Yeah.
It's so intense. You're just like, that was beautiful. I'm good.
Yeah, totally. With the colors in that, and it's so good.
I'll tell you, Far from the Madding Crowd with Carrie, I forget her last name. It's an incredible analysis, and I have to give all full credit to my therapist for this. It's a great analysis in different types of men, because she goes through 3 men in that film, and to really look at it through a Jungian perspective and see which man is treating her in certain ways and why she ends up with who she ends up with. Fascinating.
Cool. I really need to watch that.
You'll watch it very differently if you're looking for... Watch the guy she ends up with and why and how he is with her throughout the whole time.
Okay. What's it called again? Far from the
Madding Crowd.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Lots of good suggestions. Okay.
Movies.
TV
show. Don't really watch TV, although we do record. God, I think I need my sugar. My memory's shot right now. Modern Family.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's brilliant writing. I laugh out loud for at least 15 of the 22 minutes. I love it.
That's great. What about food that you love?
Food?
Yeah.
Pineapple, chocolate, almonds, macaroni and cheese, baked potatoes. I mean, if I'm on an island, I should probably bring some more practical things like some
this isn't like a magical...
Brazil nuts. Brazil nuts are so good for you.
Oh, they're so good.
And cherries, really great for the iron. And some spinach. There you go.
You can even blend it all up and make a nice smoothie.
I got a smoothie. I got to bring my Cuisinart. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This was amazing. One more thing I just wrote down on my notepad that I want to ask you. I admire you so much. That's clear. We get it. I've said it a million times. But you are so articulate and poised. Do you have any tips, or have you always been this way? And obviously with your writing, but also with your speaking and just the way you communicate, you're so eloquent. Do you have any tips?
Meditate. You need, and maybe meditation isn't your thing right now. You have to have some practice or form of stillness in your life. Whether it's laying on your living room floor, listening to music, or just 2 minutes in silence, or praying in the bathtub, or a walk around the block and not thinking about work or your relationship, just stillness. You have to wash your mind. You need to declutter. Without that, you can't access your creativity. And, I think I'm able to be articulate because, now I'm reaching for the words. See, I love the irony. But I'm able to be articulate because I'm constantly just trying to clear stuff off. Like, think about it, let it go. Analyze it, move on. Feel it. So you know who you are and where you are in space and time. And then when somebody asks you a question, you know the answer because you're home in your body,
Yeah. Oh, okay. That's amazing. I was feeling really anxious and just kind of scattered and stressed today and excited about this at the same time. And I knew that as soon as I talked to you, it would all be okay. And it was just as soon as we started speaking, I felt cozy and like I was getting a hug. So thank you so much.
Well, you pulled it off. I mean, you didn't sound anxious at all.
Oh, well, thank you. The name of this podcast is Let It Out. So is there anything else that you want to let out or that you feel like you wish I would have asked you about?
Oh, we covered a lot. Is there anything else? I would just say to everybody, what's the conversation you need to have with yourself? What's the conversation you need to have with yourself? Where you go for that walk, or you sit down and you just get real about what you're going to stop doing. Yeah. So that you can be awesome. It's not, really want to be clear about the tone here. It's not like, oh, I need to stop doing that. And I need to stop doing that because I'm a loser and I don't have that right. No, it's like, what are you going to say no to so that you can do the things that really light you up? What are you going to retire from? Quit. So you can expand.
And as you've been saying too, and really so you can give to the world and you can be of service to other people, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's eventually you hit this place where they overlap, where you're feeling full and you are your priority and you're loving yourself and respecting yourself and you know what to say no to. And then you realize, wow, all this love I have inside myself, I feel connected to everybody else. I want to ease their suffering. I want to help them. So, you loving yourself helps you become a more loving human being towards everybody.
How do you remind yourself when you forget, when you're feeling really terrible about yourself? Is there a certain thing you do to kind of come back to that?
Well, I remind myself that I'm a loving person. I mean, because usually, all of my criticism towards myself has something to do with, I didn't fully show up, or I was too harsh or too sharp, and that's where I hit the pause button and say, you're a loving person, Danielle. I mean, I know I've got a great heart. Everybody's got a great heart. Most people have a great heart. I mean, some people incarnate and they're pure evil. That's a very real earthly dynamic. But I mean, most of us so good to the core, and you just remind yourself of that, you make a different choice the next time.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, this was amazing, and we've been talking for an hour, 11 minutes, and 11 seconds now, and I'm so grateful that you exist and that you did this podcast, and I hope we get to talk lots more in this lifetime and all of the next ones.
I am so appreciative for you knocked it out with research. Thank you. This is so juicy. And this is the thing about, I'm going to write about how to be great on a podcast and how to give a great, be on both sides. And one of them is, of course, do your homework. But the reason why it's so important to do your homework is it creates this magic. Like, all these good questions had me remember things I haven't remembered in a long time, haven't talked about. So you got the best out of me. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. All right, that was my episode with Danielle. I know that you loved her as much as I did because she's just a really lovable person. Check out her book. Go see her speak if she's coming somewhere near you. I hope I see a lot of you guys at Wanderlust this week, I guess. And check out Nudu, again, NUDU, and use the code LETITOUT for 20% off your order. That's Let It Out at checkout. And they're great. They don't use any funky chemicals. They use really great ingredients. Their products smell amazing. My skin loves them. I think yours will too. And check out Gabby Bernstein's free video series all about releasing your blocks to abundance. And she's great. I love her. So check it all out. I am recording a podcast this afternoon in person. I'm not even going to tell you who it is. Just watch my Instagram stories. Find me on Instagram. I'm at Katie Delbaut. And follow me on Twitter. We can be friends there on all the social medias. I love you guys. And the emoji for this week's episode. Oh, completely forgot that that's something we do. Okay, the emoji. Let's use the coffee cup. It just came to me, and maybe I need some coffee. I don't even drink coffee. Maybe I need some tea. So use the coffee mug if you're still listening right now. Tweet it at me, tweet it at Danielle. Let us know your feelings about this episode, anything that stuck out to you. And I'll talk to you guys next week. Love you. Bye.